Happy Friday, you handsome lot, and on the ramp today I've got a 2015 Audi A6 all-road, and it's covered 145,000 miles, and it's got a little bit of a noisy wheel bearing.
Right, well, before we go getting into the job, the first thing we need to do is jump into the menu on the car and put it into jacking mode. Now you control it here, and you will see what you're doing on the screen there. So we need to go into car, go down to car systems, which is that one down the bottom. And then we want to go to servicing and checks and go down to air suspension, wheel change. Make sure that little box is ticked. Now with that suspension locked in place, we can get the vehicle up in the air. Now, it weren't long ago that I replaced the wheel bearing on this vehicle, and I can't remember which side that I replaced, but the customer wants the other side replacing. I'm going to get up in the air now and have a little look and see which one I replaced. Right, well, I'm thinking that I changed the passenger one, because the bolts look new and the wheel bearing through the disc, so you can see the disc and the wheel bearing down there, it looks relatively new. We go to the driver's side, it looks a little bit crusty and the bolts are a little bit dirty. Now this car does a lot of back lane work, if that makes sense, because it is absolutely minging underneath. Well, that wheel is now off the car. To do these centre bolts on these dry shafts, they are murderously tight. What you're meant to do, I don't do it because I always forget. Let me show you. Take the centre cap out with the wheel, get your socket and go through with the vehicle on the floor with a handbrake on, and this bolt will come undone with a little bit of fighting and jiggery pokery, but because I keep forgetting to do it, put a punch in the disc. Now get yourself a 14mm Allen key, which I haven't got, so I've had to make one out of an old sun plug key, which fits in there perfect. Now I have already slackened this off with a bar, as you can see. And get it on our gun now. I'm banging out. Beautiful. With that dry shaft bolt undone, what we're going to be doing is stripping down the brakes to give us access to that wheel bearing. I'm going to be chucking it into a little bit of a time lapse. Well, as you've just seen, I've run into a little bit of a problem. That top bolt on the caliper carrier is seized solid. So what we're going to be using is a pickle heat inductor, chuck a little bit of heat through it, and hopefully it comes undone. And with this heat inductor, I have had a lot of people saying, oh, that's a lot of money for use a bit of naked flame or oxy bottles and one thing and another, but look how safe this is. We've got a CV boot there, we've got a flexible brake hose there, and we're going to put direct heat on that bolt there, and watch how quick it heats it up. Ready? Within seconds, that bolt is glowing red. We'll just keep our finger on and off the trigger and put some heat directly straight through that bolt. And leave that now for a couple of seconds, and hopefully it will come undone. Right, well, that is not what I wanted. Even though I had put heat to it and I'd left it a good couple of minutes, and I mean I put a lot of heat on it. The bolt snapped. Oh, it only happens on a Friday, doesn't it? It only happens on a Friday. Look at that. That's what you get with aluminium and steel. That is completely unavoidable. I've tried my best to get it done. Luckily enough, this bottom one, but again, as these cars are getting older, you will run into these problems. But I'm going to show you how I overcome this problem. Is it the sort of thing you've got in stock? How much? What the hell, as much? I'm sure there's a super duper deal on a Friday, half price or something. You might as well send me a couple of them, if you could please, mate. But it'll be this afternoon, will it? Or will I catch the morning van? Sound. Well, as you've just seen, I have ordered a couple of new bolts for this caliper carrier. Now, we can't stop production, we still need to carry on. Now, let's see if that other bolt, well, the other bolt is slack. Let's just see if it does come out. I hope it does. But we can't let something like this deflate us, especially on a Friday, because we've come this far through the week. Anyway, let's crack on. Well, that bolt is now out, and as you can see, how much corrosion, well, aluminium, is on that bolt. We still need to get that one out. I think I'm going to get it out with a bit of an air chisel, I think. Brrr, hopefully. Now, on jobs like this, you have to be persistent. Don't give in. If it doesn't come out within 5 minutes, don't, oh, I can't do it. Keep at it, because it will come out. Now, I have had to use a little bit of heat again, and I've had to just warm the side of the bolt, as you can see how discoloured it's gone, and get that glowing so the heat travels all the way through to here. And again, I've got the Pickler vibro gun on it. Now, what I'm going to do, it should come up. Now, I have already moved it a little bit, as you can see. I've got somebody just holding that. Obviously, I haven't got 3 hands. And that now should. There we go. Out like that. Now that caliper carrier is off the steering knuckle, the bolt is going to be so simple to get out. All we've got to do is put a pair of mole grips on it and wind that bolt out. It is still a little bit hot. What you got to remember is on, like say if you get a price given on a job, especially wheel bearing, you look on your auto data and it says an hour. Bearing in mind that I've got all the tools to do the job and make it easier for myself, you can be expected to have a little bit of a price increase on the job, and this is why prices can creep up. Now, we've still got to get the wheel bearing off the steering knuckle. As you can see, it is a bolt on. What normally happens, the same again, the aluminium corrodes and it swells up and it pinches that steering knuckle. But we're going to have to get it off. Either way, it's got to come off. Now, it is bolt on, 4 bolts around the back. These normally do come out relatively easy, but we're going to give a bit of a clean and a little bit of a squirt of Launch Power Lube Plus to give it a better chance. Now I've removed them bolts out the back, 4 bolts. As you can see, this wheel bearing, as I did show you before, it was heavily corroded. Now I have tried giving a little bit of a tap and it is not coming out. So what I've had to do is wait for the new wheel bearing to turn up, which is a Schaeffler FAG one, just to make sure that the new bolts are in the box, which they are. So what I'm going to do now is wind one back in, probably halfway or till a couple of threads are the head's sticking out a tiny little bit, and then we're going to get the vibro gun and see if it'll just shock it out. Well, unfortunately, I've had to put a little bit of heat on it again with the pickler. Now, just to show you how much heat has transferred through it, you can see where I've put the heat. On the left-hand side, it is nice and hot. And it has just transferred through to the steering knuckle ever so slightly. And that has released it with the vibro gun. Now, these are unbelievably tight when they are corroded like this. It can be a bit of a nightmare of a job. Just look how corroded that was. We're going to have to do a lot of cleaning and make sure that surface is spotless when we put the brand new one in. Now, we do need to remove that bearing race off the drive shaft flange. And how we're going to be doing it, yes, with the pickler. What I'm going to be doing, this is an old CV boot stretcher for all you older guys out there. If you've seen these, class. Now, what I'm going to do is apply a little bit of heat to that race and spin it at the same time, and it should just drop off. Let's give it a go. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and I'm hoping this time it does, because if it doesn't, I'm going to look a bit of a plonker, aren't I? A little bit. Like that. How simple was that? Beautiful. Before we go pressing that drive flange into the new bearing, I've given everything in here a little bit of a cleaner in here. It's not going to look pretty, but I get the bearing now and make sure that it fits in there and it can move nice and easily. Because if it doesn't fit in there nice and smoothly, you need to do a little bit more cleaning until it does. Right, let's get that drive flange pressed into this bearing. Now when you're pressing the bearings in, they will only go one way because there is a magnetic strip which needs to be pointing upwards so the sensor can pick it up. Now make sure that you put a socket on the inner race and that ABS pickup ring there stays in the same place, because you can quite easily damage that. As you can see, I've got that wheel bearing now in place. Now we need to go ahead and torque the 4 bolts back up at the rear end of it. Now what I'm going to be using is old data, and everything is a good diagram. This is manufacturer's, this is. Now we need them bolts at the back, which are 23. We scroll down to 23, countersink bolts, 80 Newton meters, and then 90 degrees. Now when I was stripping this driver's side down, I noticed that the brake pads were getting a little bit close to the limit, and I ordered a set of brake pads. Now while I'm waiting for the 2 bolts for the caliper carrier to turn up, I thought I'll just change the front brake pads. And as I removed them out of the caliper, the linings come off. It's a good that was a good shout, I think, wasn't it? Right, let's just get these chucked in. Just as I finished putting this wheel back on after replacing the pads, the 2 new bolts have arrived. But you're never going to guess what? We've got another Audi in the workshop. And this one again has had the top bolt snap off in the caliper with another 2 bolts. Right, let's get back to this car now. All we've got to do is just finish off putting the discs fresh pads in. Let's get on it. Have a little guess how tight these 2 caliper carrier bolts are. 196 Newton meters. And there we have it with a little bit of magic now. That is all built back up. Now the centre drive shaft nut on these is 200 Newton meters and then 180 degrees. What we're going to do is 200 Newton meters while it's in the air with a punch in the discs to stop it from turning. And then we're going to drop it on the floor and do 180 degrees. And there we have it, just like that. That car is now back on the deck and everything torqued up to spec-a-rooney. Let's jump in it. Oh, breathe in, breathe in. Not the best when you've had a fat Friday, is it? Right, let's pop the ignition on. Wait for the screen-a-rooney to come out. We need to go back to, wait for it all to load. Car systems. Servicing and checks. Unlock the suspension. And before we give it a start, pump your brake pedal up because you have had them brakes disturbed, and we've got a good hard pedal now. Let's give it a big start. All lights are off, but we have got a TPMS sensor fault. I think it's just once inflating. Right. Left to right. Make sure that everything is nice and smooth-a-rooney. Let's take it down the road for a little bit of a test drive. I tell you what, these old Audis, well, I think anything with air suspension is so nice and such a pleasure to drive. So comfortable. And it does go on, it goes so well, this car does. Remember, avoid heavy braking because we've just put new brake pads in it. And the car is driving perfectly smooth. No wheel bearing noises. And everything is pretty much as it should be. Right, let's get back to the garage. And here we have it, after a little bit of a successful test drive. I'm happy with the car. I can now ring a customer up and say your car is ready for you. But we have had a few little hurdles along the way on this job, but there's nothing we can't get over. And we haven't let it get to us, which is a good thing. I think if you let things get to you, it's going to get you down and down and down. So just keep at it, keep your head up, keep smashing through the work. And yeah, if I don't see you tomorrow, I hope you all have a brilliant weekend and you've all had a good week, should I say. But yeah, please hit that like and subscribe button, and I will definitely see, or you will see me on the next video. Let's get it sent.